you're doing well too. All right, let's go ahead and stop sharing. And we'll go ahead and get started with today's virtual program. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Mornings with the Museum. I think this is our third or fourth edition of Mornings with the Museum. So thanks to those who have tuned in before, and thanks to those who are tuning in for the first time. But my name is Pat Kane. I'm the Public Programs and Visitor Services Coordinator at the Museum of the Grand Prairie. And in just a few moments, staff members that are joining us today will share a few of their favorite things with you. But before we do that, let's learn who's all on this live stream today. So we're just gonna go around and introduce ourselves. I already introduced myself. Barb, would you wanna introduce yourself to those watching?
Sure, I'm Barb Olschlager-Garvey. I'm the director of the Museum and Education Department at the museum at the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, and I based in the Museum of the Grand Prairie.
All right, thanks, Barb. Katie, would you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Snyder. I'm the Education Program Specialist at Museum of the Grand Prairie, which is part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District.
Thank you, Katie. And Mark, how about you?
I'm Mark Hansen. I'm the Museum of the Grand Prairie's curator.
And again, I'm Pat Kane. Thanks, Mark. I'm Pat Kane, Public Programs Visitor Services Coordinator at the museum. We always love to see where everybody's watching from. So if you could, leave a comment in the comment section and let us know where you're watching from. We're all streaming from Champaign County in our home since the museum is closed, but we would love to know where you are watching from. So leave a comment in the comment section, let us know where you're watching from. For those of you who do not know the Museum of the Grand Prairie, the Museum of the Grand Prairie opened as the Early American Museum in 1968, and for 50 plus years, our mission at the Museum of the Grand Prairie is to collect, preserve, and interpret the cultural and natural history of Champaign County and East Central Illinois. And we are also a part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. We are located within Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve in Mammoth, Illinois. And this morning's With the Museum program is a weekly series that we've done every Wednesday. As I said, I think this is our third or fourth time going around, where we encourage you all to ask your questions of us in the comment section, because we want this to be a live Q&A as we come together with all of you all. So ask any and all questions that you may have in the comment section, and we can answer those for you. But also we will share a few of our favorite things. That's the theme today, sharing some awesome stuff within the museum's collection in just a few moments. We're going to do another one of these next week, where we'll have some additional guests who are going to share a few of their favorite things, a few guests from the Homer Lake Interpretive Center as well, our sister facility at Homer Lake Forest Preserve within Champaign County Forest Preserve District. Before we get going with sharing a few of our favorite things, I already see some people commenting where they're watching from. Karen is watching it from in Mahomet. Laura is, she says she's one of Mark's biggest fans in Rantoul, Laura Keys. So shout out to Mark there. And Bev is watching in Urbana. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for letting us know where you're watching from. If you haven't done so already, let us know where you're watching from. So a few other things that we're doing that I wanted to promote before we get going. Museum of the Grand Prairie, we have ramped up our social media and digital content out to you all in this time of us being closed. So we're trying to reach the community, connect with the community in as many ways as possible, whether that's through highlighting pieces from our museum's collection, providing different stories of local history, some awesome educational activities, virtual exhibit tours, collaborative community events, book reviews, fun facts, and a whole bunch more. Feel free to check out our social media pages, not just our Facebook page here, but also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our new YouTube and Goodreads pages. All of the museum and the Homer Lake Interpretive Center, our educational facilities at the Forest Preserve District, are closed. The Champaign County Forest Preserve District areas, natural areas, are still open for you to explore. So feel free to visit one of the 6 beautiful forest preserves within Champaign County. and explore the outdoors while still maintaining a safe social distance and wearing a mask as well, just to protect yourself and to protect others. Another thing that a colleague of mine, Katie Snyder, she has collaborated with some awesome community organizations on is art in a time of quarantine. Katie, would you want to just tell the viewers what that's all about?
Sure. So throughout history, artists have responded to what's going on in their world by making art. I know a lot of people are at home making things that they may not have ever made before. Well, we wanted to highlight the kind of things that young folks are making. So this is an initiative with Museum of the Grand Prairie, Cranor Art Museum, Chambetta Moms, Urbana Arts and Culture, and Coop Adventure Play. And we're asking that students K through 12 submit their art, pictures of art, any type of art, everyone's welcome. Public school, private school, homeschool. We have an event up on our page and a way of submitting the art, and we'd love to see your art. And submissions are open through this coming Monday.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, there's, it's an awesome opportunity to get, those young artists out there to submit some great artwork because we know it's out there. So we encourage you to do that. Visit that event on our events tab on our Facebook page, as Katie mentioned. Troy, 9 years old, Troy from Muhammad asked the question. Well, I'll answer that real quick, and you guys can help me out. Wants to know if there's a limit to how many people can be in the preserve at one time. He's been enjoying the preserves a lot in the last couple of months. Well, thanks for watching, Troy, and thanks for visiting all those forest preserves. I don't think there is particularly a limit, like a set number limit at this point, just as long as folks don't gather in large groups and folks are maintaining a safe social distance. I think that is the current limitations that we have. Does that sound okay? Barb, Katie, and Mark, do you have anything else to add there?
That's right. If you can maintain a 6-foot distance from other patrons outside of your family group, of course, that's all we require. If there are too many people, the public health district will tell us, but so far that isn't happening. So people are being very respectful, and that's what we would like to see. Hey, Troy, if you're 9 years old, you're eligible to enter any piece of art into that art exhibition. So think about that too.
Yeah.
That's true. And one more thing, Troy and all the other young folks out there, that's the art exhibition, the virtual art exhibition is going to be part of the historical record that Museum of the Grand Prairie maintains. So we'd love to get those submissions.
Yeah, good question, Troy. Keep those questions coming. We'd love to answer those for you. So keep those coming in the comment section. Anita, Mindy is watching from Farmer City. Anita Pilarski says she's Mark's second biggest fan. And Anita's watching.
Get my fans out, man.
Yeah, where are our fans? Jen Kasem is watching from Muhammad. Jen, tell Nazar and your daughter hi as well too. We missed you all. Hope you all are doing well. Angela's watching too. Thanks for watching, Angela. Lastly, before we get into a few of our favorite things, one more event to promote. Tomorrow night, we're going to have a live virtual tour of our one-room schoolhouse, popular piece on the museum campus here. I'll walk you through some pre-shot video of that awesome and favorite space here in Champaign County, that one-room schoolhouse. Talk a little bit about the history of it, where it came from, the history of one-room schoolhouse education, go into some of the artifacts that are out there in that space, and also show some photos of some previous programs as well too, because we hope to do some more Summer in the Schoolhouse programs this summer, even if they have to be in a virtual fashion. So that is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock live on our Facebook page. Okay. So let's get into a few of our favorite things. So before we got into this today, I proposed to staff members to pick their favorite things, maybe a couple things. So staff members were tasked to find their favorite things, and they're going to describe their favorite object within our museum's collection. Maybe it's a photo, or maybe it's an actual three-dimensional artifact or some other things. They're going to describe that, and then also tell us why they really love that artifact, why they chose it for today's virtual program. And we'd also love to know a few of your favorite things, maybe some favorite things that you saw when you visited the museum before, or if you want to share with us your favorite things at your house too, something that is really special to you. We'd love to learn a little bit more about that as well. So put that in the comment section too. Okay, so MGP staff, who would like to go first in sharing their favorite things?
I go.
All right. So Barb's going to go first. I'm going to share the screen because we got some photos to go along with a few of our favorite things.
So when Pat told me that it was that I needed to think of my favorite things, there's like no way I can do that, right? But I did think of a theme that was probably one of my favorite things to interpret when I was the curator at the museum. So that was baseball, and I'm missing baseball a whole bunch right now, as I'm sure many of you are.
Me
So
too.
I thought, what the heck? I'll get a couple of baseball photographs out that I know are in the collection. This is a baseball team from this is part of the Gray photo collection. The Grays lived down by Broadlands in southeastern Champaign County, and this is a baseball team, but it just looks like a bunch of like farm hands, and probably was, who got together and played baseball, probably just in an open field. And they do have socks and short pants, a few of them, but they have very little equipment, as you can see. And Pat, will you show the next one? Photographer obviously wanted to take a picture with their with their hats on and with their hats off. So it's the same guys, same setup. A couple of minutes later with their hats on. Clearly, there's no regularity to the kind of hats they're wearing. There's only two pieces of equipment here. There's three. There's a baseball, there's a bat, and there's a face mask in front of the fellow fourth from the right there. So this is probably in the 1890s, around 1900. Just a rural baseball team, and I just love it because baseball was so popular then. I mean, it's still very popular, but everybody played baseball. But as time went along, it got more regulated. So Pat, could you show the next one? This is a team from Muhammad from around 1905. And this is actually the thing I thought of first when Pat said my favorite things. Because I love this photograph for so many reasons. First off, it's baseball, of course, but secondly, they wrote on the photograph that who was the umpire and who was the manager, because they're so similarly dressed, right? They're both in suit coats. They have different hats on. That's pretty much it. There's a kid who's a mascot. I love that. There's a catcher sitting in the front with a mitt and face guard, and the fella to his left is the pitcher. And the reason we know that is because he's he's one other guy that has a glove. There's a first baseman who has a glove as well, but he's wearing a sweater, which is like a warm-up jacket, right? And the best part of the photograph to me is that, well, I love the pillbox hats too. Those are awesome. But there's a horse in the background on the far left. Like, we're just out in the field, man. We're just like somebody's farm. This is how we play baseball in 1905. And then the next one. This is a baseball team from Champaign in the early 1920s, probably. And I put this up for more than one reason. One is I love this photograph because I love the stack of gloves and a little teepee or tent of yeah, right, of baseball bats, but also look in 20, 25 years how regulated things have become. Everybody has a matching uniform. Everybody has a matching cap. I also put it up because while I really love this photograph, we have absolutely no idea who these people are. We know it's Champaign from the location. And it does look like it's not a farm field anymore, but a field that's designated for baseball. But other than that, we don't know who these players are. So if anybody out there knows or knows of anybody on this team, please get in touch with the museum. We'd love to have the identification. Anyway, baseball, I love it.
Yeah, Barbara and I were just talking before we got on here that, we miss it a lot and hope that it comes back, safely, of course, but there's talks of it possibly coming back. But yeah, just even talking about it a little bit gets me excited. I used to get excited. Like you could always tell, like with the certain smells of each springtime, like fresh cut grass, and the days are getting longer. Baseball's coming as well too. So
I have so many baseball stories I could take up like 3 hours, so we won't do that.
All right. Well, thanks, Barb. Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay. So Katie's going to go next. I'm going to share the screen again. So Katie.
So yeah. So this is an artifact and a photograph from the exhibit that we opened right before we closed, called How Long Must Women Wait? Women's Suffrage and Women's Rights. And this is a picture of Irene Paolucci on the left, getting ready to go to work, looking all beautiful with her hat and her gloves and her pumps and her suit, at Caterpillar in Peoria. I love this artifact for one thing because Irene Paolucci is my mother. And for another thing, because I just really love the regular everyday stories of people. We think about people like Eleanor Roosevelt and Marian Anderson, and their stories are important, but I like the stories of regular men and women, in this case, women in this exhibit. So Irene Paolucci worked for Caterpillar during World War II. And this to the right of the picture is called a comptometer. And what she's told me is it's kind of like an early calculator. And you can even see at the top a little papers on there with some of the last calculations she made. So she worked for Caterpillar, and during the war, they sent out parts to Europe and Asia, all over for the war effort. And there were so she was a buyer. Irene Paolucci was a buyer and sold parts and bought parts for Caterpillar to keep, all the machinery running in the different war theaters. She was in the story that I've heard, she was the sole woman, and a lot of the people that had the same position were men. The men's orders were never questioned by the military brass. Irene's orders were constantly questioned. Every single one was questioned. She signed her orders, Irene Paolucci. And her boss came to her one day and said, can you just start signing your orders, I, Paolucci, letter I, Paolucci, and don't, because we think that this is happening because they know you're a woman. And so She started signing her orders I Palucci, and never again were any of her orders questioned. So to me, that's one of those stories that tells a lot, because when we were putting this exhibit together, when I went out to interview women that were a generation older than me, or maybe 2 generations older than me, what they said over and over again was really no different than what we say. People of women of my generation, that's just the way it was, right? That's just the way it was. Like, women kind of thought, okay, I want to do this thing. I can't do it like the men do. Let me go around this way and do it. So she started signing all her orders I Palucci. Everything was fine. She worked in that effort until the end of the war. The stories she always talks about are how dressed up they used to get. And she's still her feisty self, 96 years old, driving her car in Chicagoland. Look out, Chicagoland. living in the little house that her and my dad built after World War II. So once a feisty woman, always a feisty woman.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting Irene. Shout out to Irene if you're watching. She's a pretty awesome woman.
Yeah, she's on Facebook too.
Yeah. Karen said in the comments, pretty classy looking, Irene, in that photo. And then Karen also asked, what were they producing during the war?
Oh wow! If Irene was on, she could tell me. They were shipping out parts, Karen. I know that they were shipping out parts for different Caterpillar machinery that was going out, but what Cat was producing out of Peoria for the war effort, I'm not absolutely sure. But if Irene's on and her fingers are feeling good today, maybe she can type in an answer.
Irene's one of our biggest fans on Facebook. So.
She is.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie. The comptometer, Irene Palucci. Mark, do you want to go next? You want me to go next?
Yep, go ahead. Either or.
I think in the order that I have the slides, you're next. So
Okay, good
how
deal.
about let you go? All right. So I'm going to share the screen again. Here's another photo that I just found of comptometers in use, as well as a Victor comptometer advertisement too. All right, Mark, take it away.
Yeah, so one of my favorite objects in the collection is this piece of farm equipment. The 2 images I have of it here was when it was on exhibit several years ago. And what we're looking at is a single row corn cultivator. We don't know a lot about it, who made it, but almost certainly early 1900s. It would have been pulled by 2 horses. As I said, is a single row. And unlike other cultivators, this one doesn't use tines to cultivate. It actually uses 2 banks of 3 discs, which you can kind of see under the seat there. Yeah, I think this is just a really beautiful piece of engineering. It is all mechanical. As you can see, there's no hydraulics, no engine, 100% horsepower. It's kind of hard to see here, but how this is made is quite ingenious. The 2 large levers at the top raise and lower the disc gangs. So, if you're driving down the road or in your farmyard, you're not tearing everything up. There are also pedals on top of the disc gangs that allow the operator to move the entire apparatus to the right or to the left a little bit, so that they wouldn't have to steer the horses around errant corn plants. The other interesting thing about this is in this configuration, it appears that the tongue was cut off so that it could be pulled by a tractor. So, you know,
I didn't know that.
yeah, Yankee ingenuity here. If you've got a piece of farm equipment, get a tractor. Why would we get rid of it? We'll just make it work. The other interesting thing is for something as old as this, it still would function. Like I said, it's all mechanical, springs, chains, pretty neat thing. The other thing that I love about this is what it represents, especially in Champaign County, the big agricultural community. Corn is one of the farm kings, and it has been for a very long time. When this machine was built, cultivating corn was a huge deal. It was one of the only ways that you could effectively control weeds in corn. It was sort of pre-agrochemical days. And so corn was pretty labor intensive. It had to be planted very precisely in a checkerboard pattern so that you could cultivate properly. The rows had to be far enough apart so horses could get between them in both directions, because when you cultivated a cornfield, you had to do 3 passes. You would go up the row, then you would go across the row, and then you would have to go up the row again. Otherwise, when it came to harvest time, you'd have this washboard effect when you would go up the row. The other thing that's when you think about that is the time involved. Today, a lot of the work that this machine would do is sort of done by chemicals. I don't think corn cultivating is quite as big a deal. But back in the day, it was a big deal. You were cultivating corn all the time until it got too tall for this machine to go over the top. So again, we've sort of talked about this thing before about how hard farming was not all that terribly long ago. Even with the advent of tractors, I mean, it was hard work. And you know, we look at these machines as being fairly primitive by today's standards, but I'm sure when this came out, it was probably state of the art, and the farmer that used it was probably on cloud 9 because this machine could make his life that much easier. So my favorite thing, a disc corn cultivator.
Nice. And that's that I think is one of the bigger items in the collection. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
I remember moving that out of the horses are quiet, tractors are loud exhibit. And like you said, you know, it's still functional. You rolled it out much like, you know, it would roll, you know, when it was in use a long time ago. All right, well, thanks.
Because I can't let anything alone, I have an answer for Karen Baker. Caterpillar. Caterpillar produced a lot of things during the war, but tank transmissions and gun carriages were some of the things they produced. But the biggest thing they produced were crawler tractors, which of course, similar to bulldozers, moved a lot of earth around. And since the military was like always doing that wherever they went, that was the useful thing that Caterpillar made.
Well, that's good to know. And what she did was the parts that were needed throughout the war for it. So cool. Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. Hope that answered your question, Karen. But all right, last one. I know we're going a little bit over time, so I don't want to take up too much of folks' time.
It always happens with the museum people.
Yeah. Get us talking and it goes over a little bit, but that's just fine. Okay, so I chose something that related a little bit more to this area's natural history, let's see, is it gonna come up here? Okay, so when I first came to the museum and I stumbled across these two things that I'm gonna show you, I was just astonished to realize that these things were found in central Illinois. And we're gonna get to a mastodon tooth and a woolly mammoth tooth because a long time ago, thousands of years ago, there were some large animals or megafauna that were roaming east central Illinois, this area, that are no longer in existence. And that would include mastodons and woolly mammoths. I also listed a few differences between the two because a lot of people get them mixed up and confused, but there are some differences even though they look very similar. So on the left here, we have a illustration of a mastodon. Mastodons were known for being shorter and stockier than woolly mammoths. Mastodons also had, as you can see in this illustration, compared to the woolly mammoths, they had straighter tusks. They were curved, but not as curved and round as the woolly mammoth's tusks over here on the right. Mastodons thrived in warmer climates than what the woolly mammoths were used to. Woolly mammoths favored colder climates and more glacial periods in our history. And mastodons arrived earlier than the woolly mammoths, but they died off earlier as well. They died off about 13,000 years ago, and woolly mammoths survived later than the mastodons, as I already said, but they died off roughly 4,000 years ago during one of our last glacial periods. One other big difference between the two is in the teeth. Because they ate a little bit different food. They consumed some different food. So picture here is a woolly mammoth tooth, and this tooth is on display in our exhibit titled The Grand Prairie Story. And this tooth, both of these teeth are on loan from the Illinois State Museum. But this woolly mammoth tooth, as you can see, it's got these long grooves in the tooth, and these long grooves were really great at grinding up what the woolly mammoth was consuming, which would be more leafy plants, a lot more softer herbs and plants than what the mastodon would consume. Because the mastodon tooth looks a little bit different. This looks, it's got these big, large ridges on its tooth, and those were used for crunching up, branches or more fibrous things. It could crunch things up a whole lot easier, and it would consume those things. Another thing I was astonished by with these teeth is they were found, here in central Illinois. This mastodon tooth, as it says down here below, was found near Gifford, Illinois, right here in Champaign County. And this woolly mammoth tooth was found near Pekin, Illinois, a little bit farther away, but still pretty close. And I just think it's just astonishing to think that there were these large mammals once roaming this area that are no longer around. But these are the two things that I chose, a few of our favorite things, this woolly mammoth tooth and this mastodon tooth. Okay, well, that's all we got for today. Thank you all for tuning in.
Can I say something, Pat?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say hi to several people who tuned in recently or said something recently. Chris Edmondson from our golf course. Hi, Chris.
Oh, hey.
Claudine is watching. Yay. Hi, Claudine. And actually, one of my high school teachers is watching. So
Oh, sweet.
awesome. Hi, Carol. Yeah, so and we're really, really glad you've all tuned in, and we hope you'll come back. And I'm sure Pat that leads into what Pat's going to say here.
Oh yeah, yep. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll do this again next week. A few of our favorite things from some other staff members within the Museum and Education Department here at the Forest Preserves. Thanks to Barb, Katie, and Mark for joining us today. Do you all have any other parting words for anyone out there?
No, just get those submissions in, kids, for the virtual art show by Monday. We'd love to see your work.
Mark, anything you want to say to all your fans out there?
No, I'm
Okay.
sure I'll hear enough later.
Um,
We'll be back next week.
Yep. So tune in next week for another edition. By the way, Angela tuned in, Angela, one of our coworkers, and she said she's everybody's fan. So Mark was getting all the love for a little while. Angela loves us all. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Keep those questions coming. We'll share a few more favorite things next week.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
Prairie.
Bye, guys.